170 million Americans are about to be trapped under a massive heat dome, and the latest models show this event is going to be more dangerous and more long-lasting than most people realize. AccuWeather meteorologists are now warning of record-smashing daytime temperatures approaching and even exceeding 100 degrees across more than 36 states, stretching from the plains all the way to New England. Nighttime temperatures may not even drop below 80 degrees in major cities. The National Weather Service has already issued extreme heat warnings and advisories across large portions of the central and eastern United States. And the deeper you look into this forecast, the more serious the picture becomes. In this video, I am going to break down exactly who is in the crosshairs right now, and in the coming days, take you through a day-by-day outlook for the next week, explain the upper-level atmospheric pattern that is locking this heat dome in place, and then show you the bigger picture. Because when you add what is happening with El Nino development on top of this heat event, the implications for the rest of your summer go well beyond what this single heat dome can deliver. Stay with me. This is one of the most significant forecasts I've put together this year. I am Arthur, and this is Sky Space Lab. If you are new here, we do serious data-driven weather analysis on this channel. No hype, no filler, just the science, and what it actually means for your area. Hit subscribe if you want to stay ahead of what is coming. And now, let us get into the data. The heat dome is not arriving gradually. It is building fast, and it is building now. The National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center is already flagging extreme heat risks across a sweeping corridor of the United States. As of today, June 18th, heat index values across parts of Texas are forecast to climb as high as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not air temperature. That is how hot it will actually feel when you step outside in places like Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. Here is who needs to watch this the most in the immediate term: the southern plains from Texas through Oklahoma and Kansas, the lower Mississippi Valley including Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and the Ohio Valley from Missouri and Illinois through Indiana and Ohio. The National Weather Service has been explicit in its language. This is an early season heat event, and early season events are more dangerous than late summer heat, precisely because the human body has not had time to acclimatize. People are not yet heat adapted. Air conditioning systems are being turned on for the first time, and the consequences of that combination are severe. Heat kills more Americans every year than hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes combined, and it does so quietly, without the dramatic video that captures headlines. The latest GFS model runs are showing high temperatures across Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, holding at 95 to 105 degrees through Thursday, June 19th. By Friday, June 20th, that dome of heat begins its push east. The European model agrees on that timeline, which matters enormously. When the GFS and the European model are in agreement on the direction and timing of a major pattern, you pay attention. Here is the specific breakdown for the next 48 hours. In Kansas City, Missouri, temperatures are forecast to hit the upper 90s through at least Thursday. Kansas City has not hit 100 degrees since August 25, 2023, according to AccuWeather senior meteorologist Chad Merrill. That record may be threatened this week. In St. Louis, Missouri, heat index values are expected to reach 105 to 110. In Memphis, Tennessee, overnight lows may only drop to the mid to upper 70s, meaning residents will get almost no relief even at 2 in the morning. Most channels are not showing you this part. The overnight lows in this heat event are just as dangerous as the daytime peaks. When the human body cannot cool down overnight, heat stress accumulates day over day. After 3 or 4 nights without relief, the risk of heat stroke and cardiovascular stress increases dramatically for elderly residents, outdoor workers, and anyone without reliable air conditioning. For today and tomorrow, here are the cities that need to be on highest alert: Dallas, Texas, upper 90s to 102. Houston, Texas, heat index approaching 110. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, near 100 degrees. Wichita, Kansas, upper 90s. Springfield, Missouri, mid-90s with a dangerously high heat index. And Memphis, Tennessee, where conditions are going to feel like standing inside an oven by midweek. If you live in any of these areas, now is the time to check on your elderly neighbors. Now is the time to make sure your AC unit is functional. Do not wait for the hottest afternoon to find out it is broken. Are you feeling this heat right now where you live? Drop your city and current temperature in the comments. I want to know how your area is being affected. Now let us step back and look at the full 7-day picture, because this heat event has multiple phases, and the second phase may be even more significant than the first. Friday, June 19th, is a transition day. The dome of heat that has been baking the central United States begins to shift its axis eastward. The Weather Prediction Center describes a widespread heat wave building across the central United States through midweek before shifting to the East Coast, where it is expected to peak on Friday. That eastern push is what puts 170 million Americans at risk, because the East Coast population corridor from Washington to Boston is one of the most densely populated stretches of land in the entire country. Saturday, June 20th, is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and in a bitter irony, it may also be one of the hottest days of the year for tens of millions of Americans from the mid-Atlantic through New England. In major cities including Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York City, AccuWeather meteorologists are forecasting temperatures to approach or even hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If that verifies for New York City's Central Park, it will be the first time that threshold has been crossed since July of 2012. Philadelphia last saw triple-digit heat in June of 1994. These are not routine numbers, but here is where it gets really interesting, and I will show you exactly why in just a moment. Sunday, June 21st through Tuesday, June 23rd, represents the peak impact window for the northeastern New England. Boston and Portland, Maine, cities that are sometimes excluded from the worst of these events, are being flagged by AccuWeather as areas that could see temperatures that rarely occur this early in June, or at all. 5 to 7 consecutive days with temperatures reaching 90 degrees or higher are possible in Washington, D.C. and New York City. The magnitude and longevity of this heatwave will be, as AccuWeather senior meteorologist Chad Merrill put it, a shock to the system. Wednesday, June 24th through Thursday, June 25th. The NOAA Climate Prediction Center's probabilistic hazards outlook is already flagging a slight risk of extreme heat for Florida and adjacent regions extending through the end of June. Texas, the desert southwest, and the California Central Valley are also flagged for a slight risk of extreme heat through June 30th. This heat is not a one-week event that clears and resets. It is part of a much larger, more persistent atmospheric pattern, and that is what I want to explain to you now. Are you in the Northeast or New England? Tell me below whether you are prepared for this level of heat. I want to hear from you. Let me show you the mechanism behind this heat dome, because understanding the physics of what is happening will tell you a great deal about how long this pattern persists and what comes next. A heat dome forms when a ridge of high pressure, a dome of compressed descending air, parks itself over a large area of the country and refuses to move. Sinking air warms as it compresses. Clear skies allow the sun to bake the surface unimpeded for days on end. Cloud formation is suppressed. Rainfall becomes virtually impossible under the center of the dome, and because the atmosphere acts like a lid, all of that heat is trapped in the lower levels of the atmosphere where human beings live and breathe. National Weather Service meteorologist Zach Taylor has described a heat dome as a cap on the atmosphere that leads to warmer temperatures, sunnier days, and less chance of precipitation. That is the correct technical picture. But what the models are showing right now goes well beyond a typical midsummer ridge. The level of upper-level ridge amplification in the current pattern is remarkable. Think of the jet stream as a river of air flowing west to east across the continent at roughly 18,000 feet. Normally, that river meanders north and south as it goes. Right now, a powerful upper-level ridge has amplified over the southern United States, forcing the jet stream to buckle northward across the central and eastern country. That buckle is what creates the heat dome and locks it in place. The stronger and more amplified the ridge, the harder it is for cold fronts to break through and deliver relief. This is one of the strongest early summer ridge events I have seen in years. And when the European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts and the GFS Ensemble are both showing the same picture, a persistent, slow-moving ridge over the southern plains and east, that is a signal that deserves serious attention. Here is the bigger context. NOAA confirmed in its spring outlook that widespread above-average temperatures were forecast for the majority of the contiguous United States from April through June. That signal has verified, and then some. March of 2026 was the hottest March ever recorded for the contiguous United States, according to NOAA. The 12-month period from April 2025 through March 2026 has already been confirmed as the warmest such period on record globally. We are not talking about weather events that exist in isolation. We're talking about a background climate state that is warmer than it has ever been in the instrumental record, and individual weather events are supercharged by that warmer baseline. The NOAA Climate Prediction Center's 6 to 10 day outlook is projecting above normal temperatures for the East Coast, the Southeast, and large portions of the central United States well into the final week of June. The 8 to 14 day outlook shows that warmth persisting and even expanding. There is currently no strong cold front pattern on the horizon that would deliver meaningful relief to the most heavily affected areas through the end of the month. The atmosphere, in other words, is not done with us yet. For the AccuWeather summer forecast for 2026, senior meteorologist Paul Pastelok has projected that the number of 90-degree days in Boston, Chicago, New York City and Philadelphia will be near or above historical averages this season. He has specifically flagged a late surge of heat and higher humidity for the Northeast as one of the defining features of this summer. We are now watching that signature unfold in real time, and this brings me to the part of this forecast that I've been building toward, because there is one more factor layered on top of this heat dome that changes the entire context of your summer. Updated just hours ago, the big picture is shifting in a way that carries implications well beyond this single heat event, and this is the data you need to see. The heat dome building across the United States this week is not happening in a vacuum. It is the product of a specific, well-understood atmospheric configuration, and I want to go deeper into that structure now, because it tells you something important about what the rest of this summer is going to look like. The omega block. That phrase gets used a lot in meteorology, and it gets used for good reason. An omega block describes a specific jet stream pattern where a large ridge of high pressure is flanked on both sides by areas of low pressure. From above, the jet stream traces a shape that looks like the Greek letter omega, and when that pattern locks in, it can persist for weeks. The heat dome that is currently baking the central and eastern United States is being reinforced by a variation of this blocking pattern, with a persistent ridge over the southern plains amplifying and pushing northward as we move through the week. What makes this particular setup so resistant to breakdown is the combination of factors at play. The ridge is not only strong at mid-levels, it is being reinforced by surface high pressure that is simultaneously keeping cloud cover suppressed and cutting off the moisture flux that would normally moderate afternoon temperatures. Without clouds to intercept solar radiation, the ground surface heats faster. Surface temperatures transfer that heat to the lowest layer of the atmosphere, and the whole system feeds on itself in a positive feedback loop that meteorologists call sensible heat flux. The drier the ground surface, the more energy goes into heating the air rather than evaporating moisture. In areas already experiencing drought, and significant portions of the southern plains and southeast are in various stages of drought right now according to the US Drought Monitor, that feedback loop is especially intense. The latest run just came in, and it is consistent with what earlier runs were showing. The European ensemble mean is projecting above normal temperatures across the central and eastern United States through at least the 25th of June. The GFS ensemble is slightly more aggressive with the heat across the northeast during the June 20th through 22nd window. Both models agree on one critical point: this dome does not collapse quickly. Relief will come eventually, likely by late next week as a frontal boundary begins to push southward from Canada, but the timing and strength of that front remain uncertain in current model guidance. I do not want to promise you a specific cool-down date until the ensemble spread on that front tightens. Here is what NOAA's Climate Prediction Center is currently saying in its probabilistic hazards outlook, and this is data updated within the past 24 hours. A slight risk of extreme heat has been flagged for Florida and adjacent regions from Wednesday, June 24th through Tuesday, June 30th. A separate slight risk has been issued for much of Texas, the desert southwest, and the California Central Valley through that same June 24th to June 30th window. And the interior northwest is flagged for a slight risk of extreme heat from Wednesday, June 24th through Friday, June 26th. Read that list again. Florida, Texas, the desert southwest. California, the interior northwest. These are not the same region. These are opposite corners of the country. When extreme heat risk flags are appearing simultaneously across that geographic spread, it tells you something fundamental about the atmospheric state. The entire western and southern tier of the country is under the influence of persistent ridging. The system is continental in scale. Let me put some numbers to what that looks like on the ground. Phoenix, Arizona, which in mid-March of this year was already recording temperatures typical of mid-June, is entering another period of intense heat. Las Vegas, Nevada, is forecast to push well into the triple digits through the end of June. Sacramento, California, and the Central Valley from Fresno through Bakersfield are facing heat index conditions that elevate wildfire risk significantly. Portland, Oregon, and the Willamette Valley are watching for another ridge amplification event similar to what triggered the devastating Pacific Northwest heat dome of 2021, though current model guidance suggests this event will be less extreme than that historic outbreak. And still, temperatures 15 to 25 degrees above normal are possible. Here is a number that puts the current situation in historical context. March 2026 was the hottest March ever recorded across the contiguous United States, confirmed by NOAA. The 12-month period ending March 2026 was the warmest 12-month stretch on record globally. Every heat event that occurs against that warmer background baseline is measurably more intense than it would have been 30 or 40 years ago. The 100-degree reading being forecast for New York City's Central Park, if it verifies, is happening in a world that is categorically warmer than the world in which the previous records were set. That context matters for understanding the true risk. Now I want to bring this back to the AccuWeather summer forecast for 2026, because it provides a useful forward-looking framework. AccuWeather's long-range expert Paul Pastelok has forecast above-average 90-degree day counts for Boston, Chicago, New York City and Philadelphia this summer, with a specific late surge of heat and humidity expected for the Northeast. That surge appears to be arriving right on schedule, right now, as we enter the final week of June. Pastelok's team has also flagged the highest heat risk for the summer season as being concentrated across California, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. And that signal is consistent with what El Niño development typically delivers for those regions. The flooding zone most worth watching for the rest of this summer, according to AccuWeather, runs from Texas through the Ohio Valley. That is the same corridor where moisture and instability will continue to interact with the southern periphery of the heat dome to generate intense thunderstorm activity. I want to be clear on the pattern here. The heat dome suppresses storms at its center, but along its edges, particularly along the northern and western flanks, and anywhere moisture can wrap around the southern side from the Gulf, severe weather potential remains elevated. The drier the atmosphere becomes under the dome, the more explosive the storms that fire on its margins when they do form. Is this the hottest summer on record where you live? Tell me in the comments what your summer has felt like so far. I want to hear from viewers across the country about what conditions have been like at ground level. The AccuWeather 2026 summer forecast also notes that the North American monsoon is expected to arrive close to the historical average, possibly near the end of June, which is slightly earlier than normal. That would bring some relief to the southwest and southern Rockies from the most extreme heat. However, the monsoon may weaken or shift at times during July, meaning the heat relief will come in pulses rather than as a sustained pattern change. For the interior southwest, drought conditions are likely to expand or intensify before any significant monsoon moisture arrives. One more thing I want to flag in this section, because it is not getting the attention it deserves. Extreme heat is not only a health story, it is an infrastructure story. When heat index values reach 110 degrees across a large metro area for multiple consecutive days, the strain on the electrical grid is enormous. Air conditioning demand spikes sharply, simultaneously, across millions of homes and businesses. AccuWeather has specifically warned that energy bills could soar this summer, with widespread heat predicted coast to coast, and that demand surge creates grid stress in ways that can lead to localized outages at the worst possible time. The National Weather Service has flagged that an early season heat wave can often be more dangerous and pose a greater risk for heat-related illness than a comparable event in late summer. That is not bureaucratic language. It is a real physiological and infrastructural reality. We are in that early season window right now, and 170 million Americans are about to feel it directly. The data is clear, the models are in agreement, and the pattern is not going anywhere quickly. Before we wrap up, there is one more thing you need to know, and this is the part I have been building toward. El Niño is officially here. On June 11, 2026, NOAA's Climate Prediction Center issued an El Niño Advisory, a formal declaration that El Niño conditions are now present in the tropical Pacific Ocean and are expected to strengthen and persist. This is not a forecast. it is an observation. The Nino 3.4 sea surface temperature anomaly, which is the primary measure scientists use to track El Niño development, had reached nearly +1 degree Celsius by mid-May and was continuing to climb rapidly. The International Research Institute for Climate and Society at Columbia University assigned a 98% probability to El Niño conditions during the May through July 2026 window. Let that number land for a moment. 98% probability. That is not a model signal, that is a near certainty. But the story does not stop at moderate El Niño. NOAA's Climate Prediction Center is now assigning a 63% probability to a very strong El Niño event by winter of 2026 into 2027. The European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts is projecting sea surface temperature anomalies in the tropical Pacific of +3 degrees Celsius by December. Some individual ensemble members are exceeding +4 degrees, values that would be historically unprecedented. If those projections verify, we would be looking at one of the most powerful El Niño events in recorded history. The most recent weekly Nino 3.4 anomaly has crossed into positive territory, and Nino 1+2, the sea surface temperature index along the coast of Peru, is running roughly +0.7 degrees Celsius, which is a classic signature of early-stage intense event development. So what does a strong to potentially very strong El Niño mean for the rest of your summer and beyond? Let us start with the heat. El Niño acts as an amplifier of the atmospheric ridge pattern, already responsible for the heat dome we are experiencing right now. Warmer Pacific Ocean temperatures strengthen the subtropical jet stream across the southern United States. That enhanced subtropical jet carries additional moisture, but it also reinforces the upper-level high-pressure systems that generate heat events like this one. AccuWeather has explicitly noted in its 2026 summer forecast that El Niño development will have a growing influence on the weather pattern as summer progresses. The worst heat of this summer may not be the heat you're experiencing this week. That is what the data is telling me right now. For severe weather, the pattern is complex but important. El Niño typically increases wind shear across the Atlantic basin, which suppresses hurricane development. AccuWeather's 2026 summer forecast notes that severe weather, including near to above-average tornado counts, can pick up from the plains to the east coast in June and July during El Niño development. The storm track through the central United States remains active, and the flooding zone most worth watching runs from Texas through the Ohio Valley. The AccuWeather summer forecast also specifically flags the Texas Hill Country region, already devastated in 2025, as a continued area of flooding concern, and drought is expected to expand across the northwest and northern California, with long dry stretches possible along parts of the Gulf Coast and the southern Appalachians. El Niño does not deliver uniform impacts. It reshapes the entire seasonal weather pattern, producing winners and losers across different regions simultaneously. Here is the wildfire dimension. In the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies, El Niño is associated with warmer, drier conditions that expand drought and significantly elevate fire risk. AccuWeather has warned of potentially destructive wildfire seasons in the Northwest and Great Basin for 2026. With drought conditions already in place across parts of the interior West and temperatures running well above normal, the fire weather setup this summer is one of the most concerning I've tracked in recent years. Multiple red flag events are likely through summer and into early fall. Now here is the question that matters most for the long range. If the European Centre and the model ensembles are correct about El Niño reaching very strong or even historically unprecedented intensity by the end of this year, how does that affect global temperature? Scientists at Columbia University's Climate Research Program project that a strong El Niño of this magnitude would push global temperatures to approximately 1.7 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by 2027. Carbon Brief projects 2026 as the second warmest year on record globally, and NOAA has confirmed that March 2026 was the hottest March ever measured across the contiguous United States. The pattern we are now entering is not a temporary spike. It is a sustained period of elevated atmospheric energy, amplified ridge patterns, and increasingly frequent and intense heat events. The heat dome trapping 170 million Americans this week is a preview of what a supercharged El Niño-driven summer looks like, and the data says we are only at the beginning of that pattern. One final note that I want to address directly, because it speaks to why this channel does the kind of analysis it does. Weather kills more Americans than almost any other natural disaster, and heat is the leading cause of weather-related deaths in this country. The heat dome building this week is not a curiosity or a talking point. It is a serious, dangerous meteorological event affecting 170 million people across 36 states. The National Weather Service has issued its strongest language: extreme heat warnings, heat advisories, for cities from the Texas Gulf Coast all the way to the Northeast. I want you to take that seriously. I want you to check on your neighbours. I want you to know where your nearest cooling centre is, and I want you to keep watching this channel, because this story is going to keep developing through the rest of this summer. When the GFS and the European model agree on a pattern this significant, you pay attention. And they agree. The data is consistent. This heat event is real. El Nino is here. And the summer of 2026 is just getting started. The data picture for your summer is coming together clearly now. Let me give you a rapid summary of the key numbers you need to carry with you as we move through this event. Heat index values peaking at 110 degrees Fahrenheit across Texas and the lower Mississippi Valley in the next 48 hours. Daytime highs approaching, and in some cases exceeding 100 degrees in Washington, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and Portland, Maine during the June 20th through 23rd window. 5 to 7 consecutive days above 90 degrees possible in multiple major northeastern cities. 170 million Americans at risk across more than 36 states. And a NOAA El Nino Advisory in effect, with a 63% probability of a very strong event by winter and a 98% probability assigned by IRI at Columbia University that El Nino conditions are already established. Those are the headline numbers. Every single one of them is sourced from NOAA, the National Weather Service, AccuWeather, or the International Research Institute for Climate and Society. This is not speculation. This is the current state of the data. The updated GFS and European ensemble runs both support the same scenario. A heat event of this geographic scale and intensity, arriving this early in the summer season, against the backdrop of a developing El Nino that could reach historic strength by winter, is a combination of factors that demands your full attention. I've been tracking weather patterns for years, and the convergence of signals in the current forecast is one of the more remarkable setups I've seen heading into the peak of summer. Watch the overnight temperatures closely in your area over the next week. If your overnight lows are staying above 75 degrees for multiple consecutive nights, that is the signal to take your heat precautions seriously, make sure your cooling systems are working, and check on anyone vulnerable in your community. The cumulative stress of warm nights is what makes long-duration heat events deadly, not just the peak daytime readings. The most important question viewers have been asking me is whether the current heat event marks the beginning of a true summer-long pattern shift, or whether it is an isolated spike. Based on the data in front of me right now, the NOAA Climate Prediction Center outlook, the European and GFS ensemble projections, and the El Nino trajectory from the IRI at Columbia University, the answer points toward a persistent pattern of above-normal warmth, with periods of intense heat interspersed with active storm systems along the edges of recurring ridges. This is not a single event. It is the opening act of a summer defined by heat. That is the full forecast picture for today. If this video helped you understand what is coming, please hit the like button and share it with someone in one of the affected regions. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need this information. Tomorrow, I will be watching the evolution of the heat dome very closely, specifically whether the peak temperatures being forecast for the Northeast actually verify, and what the latest model runs show for any possible relief pattern by late next week. That is a critical question, and I will have updated data for you. If you only came here for the El Nino update, the full breakdown of that pattern starts deep into this video, where I walk through the NOAA and ECMWF projections in detail. I am Arthur, and this is Sky Space Lab. Stay safe out there, drink water, find shade, and I will see you tomorrow with the latest data.